Greetings, Reddit. This is a story about how my parents decided my future wasn't worth investing in, but my sister's was. It's about how my aunt stepped up when they stepped away, and how, years later, they came knocking on my door expecting a handout. Let me tell you, that door stayed firmly shut. Before we delve into the chaos, allow me to set the scene from the very beginning. I am a 27-year-old man with an older sister, Jessica, who is 29. In the ecosystem of our family home, she was the radiant golden child, and I was merely the background noise, a supporting character in her story. Some people might think familial partiality is just one child getting a little more attention or praise. That wasn't it at all. In my case, it was a blatant, undeniable favoritism that anyone with eyes could see if they cared to look. My parents, however, worked tirelessly to conceal this reality from the outside world, from relatives, grandparents, and neighbors. To them, we were the perfect, happy little family. My mother was a master of the performance, her phony smile perfected for any guest. The moment company arrived, I would magically become visible to her. She'd ask, "How's school going, Alex?" Or show Grandma your latest drawings. But the second that front door clicked shut, I was relegated back to second place. The most glaring examples were our birthdays. Jessica's birthdays were always monumental events. There were balloons, banners, intricately designed cakes, mountains of presents, and her entire class was always invited. Mine consisted of a last-minute cake from the grocery store, maybe a card, and a handful of close relatives. I remember asking my sister once, "Why don't I get balloons and big parties like you do?" She just smirked, a cruel little twist of her lips. "Because nobody cares about your boring little birthday. Mine is fun. Yours would just be embarrassing." School competitions and academic achievements were even worse. I had a clear talent for art, and my teachers constantly encouraged me to enter contests, but my parents consistently forbade it. When I was 14, I was invited to the regional art competition, and my teacher was convinced I had a real shot at winning. My parents sat me down for a serious talk. "It wouldn't be fair to Jessica if you won something she couldn't," they explained solemnly. My sister just laughed. "Please, as if anyone wants to see your scribbles. If you go and embarrass yourself, don't you dare bring our family name down with you." Meanwhile, every opportunity was handed to her. Dance lessons, singing coaches, art workshops. Whenever I begged to join a class I was passionate about, my father would chuckle dismissively and say, "We don't waste money on things you'll never be good at." I was 12 years old when he said that. There were times I wondered if I was just overreacting, but my Aunt Carol saw it all. She would slip me extra gifts for my birthday, quietly ask if I was okay, and hint that this house wasn't a life sentence. I poured all my frustration into my schoolwork, earning excellent grades, glowing teacher recommendations, and eventually I was accepted into one of the top university programs in the state. For the first time in my life, I felt a surge of genuine pride. I ran to show my folks, naively expecting a sliver of praise. My mother's face went completely flat and my father let out a heavy sigh. He said, "That's nice, Alex, but we're not paying for it." I let out a nervous laugh, certain he had to be joking, but his expression was grim. "We already have your sister in college. We're not going to stretch ourselves thin just because you want to go somewhere fancier." Fancier. I echoed in disbelief. This isn't about being fancy. This is an opportunity. It's my future. My mother quickly interjected, using her favorite line. "It wouldn't be fair to your sister. Imagine how she'd feel if you went to a better ranked school. We have to think of both of you." That was the moment I snapped. Every single time I achieved something, you shut it down. No competitions, no hobbies, and now this. You're just terrified I might outshine her. My father's voice rose to a yell. "That's enough. Do you think we're made of money? Do you think the world revolves around you?" For the very first time, they didn't even bother to deny the favoritism. Defeated, I went to my Aunt Carol and told her everything. She listened, her expression shifting from shock to a hard, determined anger. "Pack your things," she said firmly. "You're moving in with me." She promised to cover everything, tuition, housing, all of it. "You deserve a future, Alex. If they won't give it to you, I will." But she didn't stop there. The very next day, she stormed into my parents' house like a hurricane. "How dare you?" she demanded. "You're sabotaging your own son's future because of your twisted idea of fairness." My mother shot back. "This is none of your business, Carol. We are his parents. We decide what's fair." "Fair?" My aunt almost laughed, but the sound that came out was bitter and furious. "You think punishing one child for being successful is fair? What is wrong with you people?" My father rushed in, his face red. "Don't you come into our home and tell us how to raise our children. We have another daughter to consider." "And she's doing just fine, isn't she?" Aunt Carol retorted. "She's getting everything handed to her on a silver platter, while you're clipping his wings because you're scared she'll feel small." My mom's cheeks flushed with anger. "You don't understand the pressure we're under. We can't afford to make both of them happy." "No," my aunt corrected her, stepping closer. "You mean you picked your favorite and wrote the other one off. He earned this and you're too proud or too petty to help him." "Get out," my father boomed. "No," she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. "He's leaving with me. And one day, when you're wondering why he never calls, you remember this moment. You remember who walked away from him first." The room fell into a heavy silence. My parents said nothing more, but their silence screamed their consent. Later, as I was quietly packing my bags, folding each shirt with trembling hands, my mother appeared in the doorway. "You'll regret this," she sneered, her tone almost gleeful. "You'll come crawling back when she gets tired of you." My father didn't even bother to look up from his armchair, pretending I wasn't there, as if ignoring me would make me vanish. My sister, Jessica, leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, a smug smirk on her face as if she'd just won the final prize. Then the front door opened again. It was my Aunt Carol. She didn't waste time on greetings. "Is he ready?" she asked, her voice like steel. My mother spun around. "You're not taking him anywhere. He's our son." "No," my aunt replied, her voice unwavering as she took a step forward. "He's a kid you've been holding back for years, and now you're just mad that someone finally called you out on it." My father finally stood up, breaking his silence. "You don't come into my house and undermine my authority. We've raised our children just fine." "Fine?" My aunt's voice rose. "Fine is when you support them both. Fine is when you don't punish one child because the other one can't keep up. You're more worried about your precious image than his actual future." My mother's face was crimson. "You don't understand the pressure." "Stop," my aunt snapped. "You've had years to fix this. Instead, you doubled down on your favoritism and called it fairness. So guess what? He's leaving. And when he doesn't return your calls one day, remember this conversation." The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, filled with words that could never be taken back. My parents scowled. My sister rolled her eyes, but no one tried to physically stop me. I didn't say goodbye. I just picked up my bags, walked out the door, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. My parents were furious, mainly because it made them look bad to the rest of the family. They never told anyone the truth, of course. So when I abruptly packed up and moved in with my aunt, they had to scramble for an explanation, which they absolutely hated. Living with Aunt Carol was like stepping into a different reality. She didn't just pay my tuition. She gave me a home where I wasn't constantly measured and found wanting. She encouraged me, celebrated my achievements, and reminded me on the hard days that I had value. I promised her I would pay her back as soon as I could, and she just waved it off. "Don't you worry about that now, kiddo. Just focus on your future." All I could do was smile at her genuine kindness. I immediately got part-time jobs to earn my own spending money, determined not to be a burden. She never asked for a dime, but I needed to prove to myself I was serious. I shelved books at the campus library before classes, tutored high school kids in the afternoons, and worked retail all weekend. Most nights, I'd get home exhausted, with hours of homework still ahead of me. Every dollar was carefully budgeted for food, books, and bus fare, and I skipped more than a few meals to make ends meet. It was tough, but I was not going to squander the chance she had given me. I also made a silent vow to myself that day. If my parents ever came to me for help, I would remember this moment. I would remember them looking me straight in the eye and declaring, "We're not paying for your future because it wouldn't be fair to your sister." I would never, ever forget that. Moving in with my aunt was like entering a parallel universe. It was the simple things that were so different. I was treated like a normal person. She didn't make a big fuss. She didn't baby me, but she respected me. If I did something well, she'd say, "Good job." If I messed up, she didn't get angry. She just helped me figure out how to fix it. She was fully supportive of my college choice, even coming with me to orientation, asking questions about housing and making sure I had everything I needed. Meanwhile, my biological parents were in damage control mode. They told my grandparents that I had moved in with my aunt because it was closer to the university and more convenient. They painted it as a mutual decision, not a consequence of them abandoning me. I didn't bother to correct them publicly. I just focused on my studies. For the first time, I had the mental space to discover who I was. I worked hard. I studied. I was actually doing well. Every small success felt monumental. Not for bragging rights, but because it was mine. No one could take it away from me. No one could say, "Don't do that, it'll make your sister feel bad." It was all mine. And speaking of my sister, Jessica wasn't doing so well. My grandparents would occasionally give me brief updates. She'd graduated from her less demanding college, but instead of getting a job in her field, she decided she was destined to be her own boss. This translated to launching a series of bizarre business ventures with zero planning. It started with a small boutique, then an online lifestyle brand, then some other half-baked project. Every single one failed, and every single time, my parents bylaid her out. Whenever someone suggested she get a normal job, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Why would I waste my time making coffee for strangers when I can be an entrepreneur?" When her businesses inevitably collapsed, she always had an excuse. The market just wasn't ready for my vision. If Mom and Dad had given me more startup capital, it would have worked. It was a complete joke. She considered a regular 9-to-5 job to be beneath her. She wanted the success without the struggle. My parents, as always, enabled her. She'd dream up a new business plan, and instead of urging her to be realistic, they'd pour more money into it. Then it would crash, and they'd act surprised. Rinse and repeat. By the time I graduated, I had more legitimate work experience on my resume than my older sister. And when I landed my first real, career track job, it felt like I had finally crossed an invisible finish line. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing on my own 2 feet. A few years later, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small house. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine. I will never forget the day I signed the mortgage papers. My Aunt Carol came with me, and she started to cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but a quiet, proud moment. "You did this, Alex," she whispered, "all on your own." Throughout this time, my parents maintained the facade that everything was fine. At family gatherings, they would talk about how well both their children were doing. They'd brag about Jessica's business ventures as if she were the next Steve Jobs. They'd rarely mention me, and when they did, it was in vague terms like, "Oh, yes, Alex is working now. He's doing fine." They never acknowledged that I had lived with my aunt for years. They never admitted they hadn't supported me through college. But here's the thing, I didn't care anymore. I had my aunt. I had my grandparents, and that was enough. They were the ones who showed up for me. The rest was just noise. I also paid back my aunt for every single penny she spent on my education. It took a while, but I made sure it was done. She tried to refuse at first, but I insisted. I told her it was important to me, not just financially, but as a way to prove to myself that I could truly stand on my own. And while I was building my life, my parents were sinking deeper into debt. My sister's failures were piling up, and instead of facing reality, they took out loans to keep funding her delusions. I learned later they had even started borrowing from other relatives. They were so desperate to keep the golden child dream alive that they were bankrupting themselves. Moving in with my aunt was the defining moment of my life. It wasn't easy, but it was liberating. It was the first time I got to write my own story instead of being cast as the shadow. I'd been in my career for several years when things shifted. Life was stable. I was paying my mortgage. I owned my home, and things felt good. For the first time, I wasn't worried about what my parents thought. I wasn't second-guessing my decisions. I was just living. Then, 2 months ago, I got a promotion that changed everything. This wasn't a small, "we'll give you an extra $1 an hour" kind of deal. It was a major promotion with a significant raise. The kind that makes you sit and stare at the email from HR, thinking, "Wait, is this real? Did they send this to the right person?" I had worked my tail off for it. Late nights, taking on extra projects, going above and beyond when no one was asking. And it paid off. The first people I wanted to tell were my Aunt Carol and my grandparents. They had been my unwavering support system from the start. They believed in me when my own parents wouldn't. I called them, and the joy in their voices was palpable. My aunt cried on the phone. My grandmother said she always knew I'd do great things. My grandfather said I earned it and he was damn proud of me. That phone call meant more to me than the promotion itself. To celebrate, I decided to take them all out to a fancy dinner. The kind of place with cloth napkins and multiple forks. The dinner was amazing. We laughed, we ate, and we talked about the long road it took to get here. My aunt kept saying, "See, I told you it would all work out." She was the kind of person who saw the best in me even when I couldn't see it myself. My grandparents were beaming. They told stories about when I was a kid, how they always saw me as the quiet achiever, even if my parents never acknowledged it. It felt like my life had come full circle. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. At the end of the night, my aunt snapped a few photos of us at the table. Nothing flashy, just a few happy pictures. Later, she posted them on her social media. She wrote a sweet, lengthy caption about how proud she was, how she'd watched me struggle and grow, and how wonderful it was to see me enjoying the fruits of my labor. I didn't think anything of it. To me, it was just a lovely post from my aunt. But of course, my sister follows her, and that's how the whole thing exploded. Apparently, when Jessica saw the pictures of us at the high-end restaurant, she had a complete meltdown. She sent me a message on Instagram. "Wow, must be nice flaunting your money while your real family can't even keep the lights on." I stared at the message, trying to process the sheer audacity. This was the first direct communication I'd had from her in years. Not a "hey, congrats on the promotion." Not a "how have you been?" Not even a simple hello. Just pure, unfiltered entitlement. She saw me doing well, and her first instinct wasn't to be happy for me, but to demand a piece of it. I replied simply, "I worked for this, Jessica. Nobody handed it to me." Her response was immediate. "Spare me. You wouldn't even have a degree if Aunt Carol hadn't bylaid you out. You think you're so special because you got lucky with one job." Then my parents jumped in. They sent me a long, rambling email about all the sacrifices they had made for me growing up and how it was now my duty as a son to support them. "We took care of you," they wrote. "Now it's your turn to take care of us." I actually laughed out loud. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not because they asked, but because they had the gall to demand it as if it were their right. My sister doubled down. She sent another message, accusing me of being selfish and abandoning my family. She claimed I owed her because all her failed businesses were for the family's future, and I should be supporting her dreams now that I had a stable income. She actually said, "If you really cared about family, you'd invest in me. We'd all benefit when I finally make it big." I thought that would be the end of it, but then I ran into her on the street a few days later. Of course, she couldn't just walk by. She had to start something. She crossed her arms and sneered. "Well, well, Mr. Big Shot, must feel good thinking you're better than the rest of us." I kept my voice calm and even. "I don't think I'm better. I just worked harder." "There's a difference. Please," she shot back. "If I had half your opportunities, I'd be running an empire by now." "Opportunities?" I raised an eyebrow. "You were handed every opportunity there was. Don't blame me for your laziness." "Laziness?" she scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm an entrepreneur. I don't waste my life chained to a desk." I smirked. "Entrepreneurs actually build things, Jessica. You just burn through wallets and call it a vision. There's a difference." Her chin went up, a desperate attempt to project confidence. "You'll regret cutting us off. When my next idea takes off, you'll be the one begging to be in my shadow." I stepped closer, my voice low. "No, the only thing I regret is wasting so much of my life trying to earn your approval. Enjoy your fantasy world, but don't ever expect me to pay for it." I turned and started to walk away. Behind me, her composure finally broke. "You'll regret this," she shrieked. "You think you're so great now, but you're nothing without us. Nothing." I didn't look back. I just kept walking, leaving her screaming at my back. I was stunned by the sheer arrogance. This was the same sister who got everything on a silver platter, while I was told to be content with scraps. And now she wanted me to fund her lifestyle, too. I screenshotted her messages and sent them to my aunt and grandparents. My aunt called me within minutes, absolutely incandescent with rage. I've never heard her so angry. She said that she knew they were selfish, but this was a whole new level of delusion. She then called my parents directly. I don't know exactly what she said, but from what I heard later, she tore into them like never before. She laid out everything. How they refused my tuition, how they constantly favored Jessica, how they let me walk out the door at 18 without a fight. She told them they had no right to ask me for anything and that they should be ashamed of themselves for even trying. Then came the bigger shockwave. The rest of the family found out. Once my aunt started talking, the story spread like wildfire. My paternal grandparents called me, asking what was going on. So I told them the unvarnished truth. They were horrified. Apparently, my parents had been asking them for money for years, claiming it was to help the kids. My grandparents assumed they were distributing the help evenly between me and Jessica. They were furious when they learned that every penny had gone to subsidizing my sister's endless string of failed businesses, while I got absolutely nothing. They immediately called my parents and cut them off financially. They told them that if Jessica wanted to be an adult, she needed to get a job and pay her own bills like everyone else. No more handouts. I had no idea my grandparents had been giving them money all this time. It blew my mind how deep my parents' lies went to maintain the golden child narrative. They pretended to everyone that they were doting, supportive parents to both children, when in reality they were funneling everything to one while actively sabotaging the other. And just like that, the moment their dirty little secret was exposed, their carefully constructed image of a perfect family crumbled. Relatives who used to fawn over Jessica started to view my parents with suspicion. People who thought my mother was such a wonderful, selfless mom suddenly saw that she'd been playing favorites all along. My sister, predictably, blamed me for everything. She sent me another furious message, claiming I was airing dirty laundry and turning the family against them. Suddenly, I was the villain for refusing to keep their secret any longer. Then she called. I answered. There was no hello, just screaming. "You've ruined everything. You owe us. Those businesses were for the family." I let her rant for about a minute before I said calmly, "Are you done?" She just got louder. I pressed the end call button. Then I blocked her number. It was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in years. My parents switched tactics after that, but there was no apology. My phone lit up daily with messages dripping with guilt and anger. "You've destroyed this family. You'll regret cutting us off. You think you're better than us. You're nothing without us." They tried to drag other family members into it, telling anyone who would listen how ungrateful and cruel I was. When that got no response, they escalated. Angry voicemails, late-night calls. They even showed up unannounced at my aunt's house. They tried everything, begging, threatening, gaslighting. One day it was, "We're your parents, you owe us." The next, "Fine, just don't come crawling back when you fail." Then I did something just for myself. I bought a motorcycle, something I'd wanted since I was a kid but was always told was irresponsible. I took it out on the open road, wind in my hair, music blasting in my helmet, and I didn't give a single thought to their approval. My sister was living rent-free in my parents' house, mooching off them as they drowned in debt, and I was supposed to be the selfish one. The delusion was so thick it almost stopped being infuriating. What did get to me was her accusation that I was responsible for ruining their reputation. She said the rest of the family was judging them now because I aired dirty laundry. No, people were judging them because they finally learned the truth. The years of favoritism, the college debacle, the way they built her up by tearing me down. I didn't make any of that happen. I just stopped hiding it for them. That's when the begging started. My mother sent a message that reeked of desperation. "Please don't cut us off, Alex. We know we weren't perfect, but we're still your parents." My father wrote something about how family needs to stick together in tough times. And the funniest part, they tried to guilt-trip me by saying, "Think of your sister, she needs you." as if my entire childhood wasn't sacrificed so she could be the center of the universe. I didn't respond to a single message, not one word. Instead, I blocked their numbers. Phone, social media, everything. I told my maternal grandparents that I didn't want any more updates about them. I didn't care what excuse they came up with, what apology they manufactured, or what sob story they peddled. I was done. I can't describe the profound satisfaction that came with hitting that block button. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even revenge in a dramatic sense. It was just relief, like I had finally shut and locked a door that had been left hanging open for far too long. In the meantime, the family had turned on them. My aunt was relentless. Every time they tried to spin a new narrative, she shut it down with cold, hard facts. My paternal grandparents refused to send them another cent. The golden girl, who used to walk into every family gathering like a queen, was now largely ignored. No one asked about her businesses anymore. No one cared about her grand ideas. They knew the truth. My aunt told me later that my mother had cried on the phone to her, saying she didn't understand where she went wrong. Maybe in her mind that was true. Maybe she genuinely didn't see it. But in my mind, she knew exactly what she was doing. Every time she said, "It wouldn't be fair to your sister," she was making a choice. And choices have consequences. My father just went quiet. That was his move. He'd let my mother and sister run the show and then act like he had no say in it. But silence is also a choice. He enabled it. He never once stood up for me. So no, he doesn't get a pass either. And watching their facade crumble, seeing the shift from haughty demands to pathetic pleas was satisfying in its own way. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because it validated everything I already knew. They never cared about me. They cared about control, appearances, and keeping my sister on her pedestal. When that crumbled, they had nothing left. That's when I had a major realization. I didn't have to scream at them. I didn't have to confront them. I didn't need some spectacular revenge. All I had to do was live my life, succeed on my own terms, and say no. That was enough. The irony was almost comical. They spent years holding me back so she could shine. And now she was unemployed, drowning in debt, and ostracized by the family. For once, the truth was out. Everyone knew who they really were. They couldn't hide behind fake smiles and curated social media posts anymore. And honestly, that felt better than any revenge I could have ever plotted. I kept hearing small updates, not because I asked, but because family loves to gossip. Apparently, my parents were scrambling to figure out how to pay their bills without the supplemental income from my paternal grandparents. The loans they'd taken out to keep bailing out my sister were starting to come due. Debt collectors were calling, payments were late, and they had nothing to show for it but a string of her failed business ideas. My sister still refused to get a job, believing she was too good to work for someone else. She had another, brilliant, business idea she wanted to launch, but no one in the family was willing to fund it anymore. Even my paternal grandparents told her that if she wanted money, she had to go earn it. For years, they sacrificed me on the altar of her ego. They stopped me from shining, downplayed my birthdays, blocked me from competitions I might have won, and refused to fund my education because it might make her look bad. They conditioned her to believe the world revolved around her. And now she was living that reality, expecting someone else to fix everything. Except this time, there was no one left to do it. What truly blew me away was the reaction of my aunt and grandparents. They didn't just support me, they went to bat for me. My aunt eviscerated my parents. My paternal grandparents cut them off financially and praised me for building my own life. And my maternal grandparents told me to just focus on my own happiness. For the first time, I felt completely and totally seen. My aunt was my rock through it all. "You don't owe them a thing," she'd tell me. And she was right. She was the one who rescued me, who believed in me, who gave me a future. And my sister. She kept trying to throw little digs through other people, saying I was cold or heartless. They had taken out loans and credit cards in my sister's name. The collection calls were now coming not just for them, but for her, too. The self-proclaimed CEO who thought she was too good for a real job couldn't even get approved for a new cell phone contract. While I was signing mortgage papers, she was sleeping until noon in the same bedroom she'd had as a teenager. No job, no money, and no plan. After everything went down with my parents and sister, I focused entirely on my own life. I refused to let their drama poison my adulthood. It wasn't easy at first. Cutting off your own family, even when they treated you horribly, leaves a strange, empty space. But over time, I started filling that space with people who actually cared. In the end, I didn't need revenge. Karma took care of them just fine.